Alright, me. It is still late June, and I no longer have hair. But earlier today, while watching some softball in the background, I read Bridge of Terabithia by Katherine Paterson. This obviously is a much later edition of Bridge of Terabithia. This was initially published in 1977, which I would argue is very, very important. And my vague recollections of the mid 2000s movie, which is what this cover is based off of, don't do my vague recollections of it do not do some of these points justice, right? Because I think that there's a very, very specific time period that becomes important in all of this, right? So Bridge to Terabithia, for my generation at least, is one of these very, very pivotal, I guess is the right word, pieces of where it is like, it is a book about loss, right? And about death, and about like, how do we actually handle these things? And how do we work with children to handle these things, and how do we move forward with things, right? And you know, it's an incredibly important topic, and yeah. So in that sense, right, this book comes through in this great tragedy all of a sudden. It seems to appear out of nowhere. There's certainly a lot of foreshadowing to it, but it's just one of those pieces that, like, the suddenness of it sometimes shocks you, which is fair, right? Because that's the way that death works in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to children, right? So yeah, so that's that. The overall plot, right, is that, right, if you were to age these people up to being in their late teens to early 20s, right, this would be we would be shaming this book for being this kind of manic pixie dream girl type book, right? If these characters were roughly, 15 and up, 16 and up, right? If this was Percy being Wallflower or a John Green novel, right? That's what we would be shaming this book for. And so it's interesting that it is set to where these children are, in the 5th grade. And so that makes them about 11. Which I think changes some of these things, right? Yeah, and for that reason, like I said, I think it's important that this book is set in kind of the late 70s to early 80s, right? I want to say that in the 2000, I think, 6 movie, 2007 movie, whatever it is, it's set in, I don't even know when it's set in during that time. It might also be set in the 70s. But like this envisionment of needing to truly understand, like, this massive difference in culture shift, and in this, what does it mean to be in a truly isolated conservative area that is incredibly impoverished, right? You have our main character, Jess. His family is a farm family of sorts, but not truly. They seem to have some land, and they seem to be working in some way off the land, but not fully off the land. They're not fully farming. And they're kind of caught in this kind of wave of things, right? Of where it is this, everything is falling apart around them in so many ways, but the oldest daughters have this envisionment of what their life is supposed to be like, right? Because they have now been living in this culture of the 60s and 70s of where there's a certain entitlement to what the world is supposed to have for you, which then going into the financial straits of the 1970s, along with then this clash of freedoms throughout the 60s and 70s, especially for women, is this very weird thing that's all occurring at the same time, right? Because in contrast, right, you have the overly stereotyped conservative rural America that Jess is living in with all of his family, and everyone around him. And there are certain things that get pulled out there, right, of the abuse, especially towards children, is normal, but you just don't tell anyone about it. The whole men are men, women are women thing, right? And that they should not be interacting with each other at all until it is time for them to court each other, which comes out both in the school form as well as these issues that are occurring within Jess's home life and how he interacts with Leslie while at home. You're dealing with the issues of this misogyny, which ties into the other thing, but then also this within that, right? The men are men, and throughout all of this, Jess is going through this journey of he likes to do art and he likes to draw, and his favorite thing that he does that occurs during school is this music teacher that comes only on Fridays. Right, and it is this thing of this very anti-gay stance that's occurring within rural America. All of this is occurring and is the normalized way to Jess and to everyone else around him. But then you have really kind of two people that are very opposite this, right? Number one is Leslie, who is the girl who moves in next door and is also the girl that will eventually drown. And it is this kind of interaction with her of right, she is a child of the 1960s, 1970s movement of how we raise children, and this very permissive style, and this very, right, you treat them adults in the way that, like, not necessarily that you give them jobs and things, but rather you force them to think like adults, right? And then along with that, you have her parents, who we don't see a whole bunch, but follow very much into that. And then the other one is, what's the teacher's name? It's the music teacher that only comes on Fridays, right? She is very much a hippie, and is talked down to in a lot of ways, but is, right, this only teacher in this very, very rural, conservative, small town that bucks any sort of status quo or changes any sort of, like, way that things should always work. And so Jess is incredibly drawn to her, because that is, right, that's his way out of things, right, in a lot of ways. And so we get this kind of interesting love infatuation that he has of her, which is mostly documented. It's documented periodically, and then the chapter occurs in which the teacher takes Jess to a museum in Washington. And it is this from, I don't know, from a teacher perspective, right? Obviously, you would never do this, right? This would be something that would be setting off alarms everywhere. To go call a child at their house, pick them up at their house, take them alone to a museum, and then during every single, like, the physical closeness that's constantly occurring, right? It's all, you know, red flag, red flag, red flag, right? But I would think that the point of this is not that the teacher is not meant to be pedophilic, right? What I think is meant to be occurring is that the teacher, as described by what happens at the very end when the teacher drops Jess off, right, is that, and I think it occurs right when she picks Jess up as well, of like, this is a teacher that wants to teach and wants to reach the youths, but is in this position in which she just has a job in which the people around her don't appreciate her and don't like her, and don't respect her. And so like there's this one child, this one student that is very interested and clearly needs a way out and needs someone to talk to about stuff and needs to explore the world. And so as the teacher describes at one point, it is like this, oh, what would she say? She said it's like this, well, at least my life will have been worth something to someone, or just one person, right? And it's this whole thing of the desperation of being in a situation, being in a place that where although you were doing what you were asked to do, is being looked so down upon, and then just reaching that one person that's interested in it, and then devoting all your attention to that person, right? And so for like, right, from the teacher's perspective, I don't think it's meant to be pedophilic, and I think from the audience perspective, it's not meant to be. But the way it's written is that it is a young boy who's experiencing for really the first time a woman or a girl in their life that is simply just paying a lot of attention to them in a way that is not familial, right? And so, and this occurs at another point with Jess and his younger sister Maybelle, of clearly there's something going on with Jess in terms of this a need for some sort of relationship, because he loves the fact that Maybelle worships him, but then also is like at the very end of this, like while Maybelle is getting dressed at one point, Jess is just staring at her, right? And it's another thing of like, you have to take into account that this is the 1970s, 1980s, right? Of where this would not be something that would fly pretty much anywhere, as far as I'm aware, in America at this point. Of just the how do we handle these relationships, and what does our main character actually want out of things, right? So that's all going on. That's that. You know, you have Jess' relationship to Leslie, and that's obviously the big thing, right? And to say it is this manic pixie dream girl relationship is I think covers a lot of it. I mean, just go think back to Looking for Alaska or Paper Towns or anything of that sort, right? Of where it is this this very dependent relationship in which you have this girl that's an outsider and is interesting and changes the life of our male main character, and then is suddenly gone. And certainly this book doesn't take as much time to then deal with the how do we live afterwards, right, after our life has been changed kind of deal. If we only get one chapter with it, 2 chapters. But yeah, it is this very, very strange thing of writing a story like this and then putting it with children of this age. But what is meant to come out of it is this whole idea of that, right, you have Leslie who moves in and makes 1.5 friends, and this whole world of Leslie is attempting to try and make what is this very permissive life that she's lived in which her parents, right, it's a different form of neglect, right? In Jess's case with neglect, it is that Jess is just asked to do everything and has to do everything, and is just kind of is treated as an adult in the sense that he just has to be an adult and he has to just do stuff, right? Versus Leslie, who is neglected and is asked to be an adult in the way that, like, just kind of has to figure it out as well, not in the sense of physically, but in mentally just has to just kind of do stuff, right? And both parents not necessarily being involved in raising Leslie as a person, right? And it's really about this response to this, right? Of where Jess's response has been basically to shut down and just do the Midwest and put his head down and just keep moving forward. Whereas Leslie's response to this has been, let's explore the world and let us make as much as we can out of it. Because if we show that we are scared or that we are upset by it, then everything will come tumbling down, right? So the entire point of the book in a lot of ways, I think, is to show this kind of transition of Jess from being socially outcast because he forces himself to be socially outcast to just being someone who is willing to then also make the world for someone else, right? And he begins to make the world for his younger sister Maybelle, who is also in the same situation of being neglected by the family. And that, the whole story of the most important things that we can do for people is to help build the world around them and to make the world around us a better place for everyone, right? Not just for our selfish own selves, but for everyone, right? So that's it. That's Bridge to Terabithia. Very short read. It's like 120 pages or something, but yeah.